For many years, while I lived in Montreal, which is where I'm from, my partner and I would go camping on the coast of Maine every summer. When we traveled together, we tended toward remote state parks with few visitors, beachside coves far from the maddening crowds. I remember one night at one of our favorite places, camped in the dunes by the beach. He and I were kind of nestled in the curving embrace of sand and sea and the night sky. Our fire had died out, as had our conversation. The moon had set. We were kind of sitting there looking up into the stars, the wind rustling softly through the grasses, and there wasn't any part of that sky that wasn't filled with stars. There was this moment where it seemed like the world held its breath. I sensed not so much my smallness in the face of the night sky, that I was clinging to this mote of dust on the far-flung edge of the universe, but rather that I was an inextricable part of something much larger and tremendous than myself. The view of the universe from where we were, the earth beneath us, the wide rolling sea whispering along the shore, all was beyond me and yet somehow part of me. The moment passed. My partner leaned over and turned to me and just looked at me with this wordless, utter amazement and said, "Wow." I've had other such moments in my life, and I'm sure you might have had as well, in my many expeditions in the woods, on mountains and deserts, by the ocean, the star-filled sky, the mountain vista, the canoe moving silently on the face of the golden late afternoon water, the monastic silence of the daytime desert. I've had other such moments in my life that were not in the natural landscape, but rather a human one, an apprehension both of the amazing capabilities of humanity and my participation in those powers, the sense that I belonged to something larger than myself. There are moments when we feel that we are a small part of something far greater than us, moments when we encounter something far greater than us, moments when we experience an enlarged sense of the self, when the boundaries of the self or the ego expand to take in more than what constitutes our skin and bones daily body self. The shell of the ordinary cracks open and falls away. The inner encounters the beyond, with eternity rushing into ordinary time, and the mundane fills with the extraordinary. Heaven and earth don't simply embrace, they reveal themselves to each be the inverse of the other. There are moments of awe and wonder when the world that we survey astounds us with its grandeur and its beauty. There are moments when what I would call the holy breaks into our ordinary lives, and there is nothing to do but stand back in silent amazement. Wow. I believe that the religious sensibility begins here. This is the precise beginning of religion, the human experience of reverence. Reverence is that human response to those forces and powers beyond the self. It is a kind of humility and awe and enlargement in the face of grandeur. Reverence is our response to that encounter with the holy. Unitarian Universalists list the sources of our common religious movement. The living tradition which we share draws from many sources, this statement reads, and the very first listed source of our religious movement, the very first one is direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. It's our first source. The religious sensibility begins with this direct experience of transcendence, mystery, and wonder, a phenomenon experienced by humans in all cultures, and of differing and of no theological beliefs. Reverence is the human response to those forces and powers beyond the self, however perceived or named, which remind us that we are but one strand in the interdependent web of all existence. It is an apprehension of the divine, the sacred. The holy, my colleague, the Reverend Kendall Gibbons writes, the holy is nothing but the ordinary held up to the light and profoundly seen. It is the awareness of a creativity and a connection that we do not control in a universe that is always larger, more intricate, and more astonishing than we imagine. That's Kendall Gibbons. Reverence is a virtue that acknowledges the limits of the individual, perhaps which is why I think so many people have difficulty with it. Respecting that there are circumstances outside our control leads to the capacity for awe and humility and for grace. It is not to bend the knee unthinking to anyone or anything more powerful, but rather the amazed acceptance of the confines of our own power. The gracious allowance of forces greater than ourselves, be they gods or moral virtues or natural processes or even death. Reverence is the capacity for awe in the face of whatever is transcendent, and the antidote of hubris and self-involvement. The human experience, Kendall Gibbons continues, the human experience of finding ourselves in the presence of that intense, fleeting, and demanding moment when the dull surfaces of things become transparent to a significance almost greater than we can bear, belongs to all of us. Only by not paying attention can we avoid it. It doesn't need gods or angels or magical other worlds. The world we have is magical enough, holy enough, sacred enough. We are the ones who bring the eyes to see, the minds and souls to marvel. It's Kendall Gibbons. Only by not paying attention, can we avoid it. The world itself, this intricate and textured and layered web of creation in which we participate, is a means of knowing and experiencing the holy. One need not look to another world, a spirit world, for the experience. One need not go on pilgrimage to a holy city or look to far-off wild places or especially saintly people for glimpses of this. We receive them like tiny gifts of grace where we are in the circumstances we find ourselves in every day. But the trick is to see them, to notice, and to see. In her literary essay, Pilgrim at Tinker Creek, the writer Annie Dillard includes an entire chapter on seeing. She describes seeing, or more accurately, not seeing, a whole flock of red-winged blackbirds in the branches of a tree. She writes, "These disappearances stun me into stillness and concentration. They say of nature that it conceals with a grand nonchalance, and they say of vision that it is a deliberate gift. For nature does reveal as well as conceal. Now you don't see it, now you do. Beauty and grace are performed whether or not we will or sense them," she goes on. "The least we can do is try to be there." Revelation is seeing what is right in front of us, seeing with new eyes, being present enough to notice. Being fully present to the world around us is the pathway to a deeper vision. Observing watchfully the world around us is the way to the holy. To be observant is to be open to the holy, revealing itself in its awesome splendor and in its daily graces. Becoming observant is a way of entering into the presence that is always with us, if we would only have eyes to see. We ordinarily relate to the word observant to religious practice, saying of someone, for example, that they might be Jewish but not observant, or that we observe certain holidays. This practice of observing, of making observations, takes a different turn, no less religious as far as I'm concerned, as we come to speak of the presence of the holy in our world, which is kind of what Advent and Christmas are about for me. The traces of beauty and grandeur are all around us if we would only be observant enough to see. The world of the immanent and incarnate divine is all around us. We need only to be there, to be present, to observe. But observations are made from the outside. And when it comes to our natural environment, we are insiders. We participate in creation and are part of it, not apart from it. Observing the world, especially the natural world, is not only a dispassionate scientific cataloging of flora and fauna. Observance means also attending to those connections that bind us up in mutual relation with the world. That help us to understand our strand in that interdependent web of life. Being observant is to become enthralled, maybe even, with the greatness, the possibilities of the creative power that we see alive in our planet. We observe. We behold. This season of Advent and, of course, the night of winter solstice and Christmas Eve are a time of watchfulness and expectancy, a time to wait and see. During this time, we keep vigilant for the holy breaking into the mundane as a thief in the night. We keep watching for the glimpse of first light, watching for the divine light born in the darkness. Not knowing the day or time of arrival, we stay awake, awakened to the possibility of glimpses of the holy all around us. Staying awake, keeping an all-night vigil in the longest night of the year reminds us to stay awake throughout our lives, to attend to the possibilities of reverence that we might miss if we aren't awake and ready and observant. The dark, as in this dark time of year, forms a kind of blindness, an inability to see what surrounds us. When we are in the dark, think about how we use this language. We're in the dark, we're kept in the dark. We are without knowledge, without awareness. The blind, in the literature of the ancient world, are the seers and the visionaries. People who can see what others miss. Think of the blind visionary in Sophocles' play, King Oedipus, and how Oedipus plucks out his own eyes when he sees what he has done, although unknowingly. Jesus is depicted as giving sight to the blind, who alone are aware of his true messianic identity. Seeing and knowing, blindness and light. The light of knowledge, darkness and insight. These are the themes of such stories and represent a contemplation on what it means to see, what the gift of vision means for seeing the holy that is right in front of us. It is that coming light to which we attend at this time of year, waiting for, hoping for light to break forth. And in that light, we see what has been obscured from our sight. Within our everyday landscape, great powers of being coarse, and all that is around us is vibrant with life. We awaken to the significance of all that surrounds us, see the world with new eyes, new insight. The divine is not beyond us, but right in front of us, and among us, and within us. The soul is not more than the body, Walt Whitman says in his poem, Song of Myself. The body is not more than the soul. Body and soul, heaven and earth, holy and profane, are not opposites, opposed to each other. God is not over and above the world, spiritual and bodiless, but is the world. The earth, the body, the profane are all actually holy. The holy resides unseen within the ordinary and the mundane. The soul is manifest or incarnate in the body. There is no heaven except the earth within which we live, no soul that is other than that which expresses itself in the body. I hear and behold God in every object, is what Whitman says. I'm just going to read you some lines from that poem. Why should I wish to see God better than this day? This is Whitman. I see something of God each hour of the 24, and each moment then, in the faces of men and women I see God, and in my own face in the glass. I find letters from God dropped in the street, and every one is signed by God's name, and I leave them where they are, for I know that wheresoever I go, others will punctually come forever and ever. It's Walt Whitman, who I love. God is present within the world as much as God is beyond the world, like intimate with us and also transcendent, related to and expressed through the world we see around us, as well as being utterly beyond it. Experience of the holy is as close to us as our breath, as intimate as the contemplations of our pondering hearts. The divine is accessible to us in our everyday lives, in our everyday natural and human landscapes. You know, many people think of the divine as a higher power. I sometimes think of it, or like to think of it, as a deeper power. It's incarnate all around us, revealed to those who observe, revealed and hidden. Now you don't see it, now you do. What would it be like for you to greet each person you meet as if they were an incarnation of the divine? What would it take to revere each person as infinitely sacred? And what are the implications of that for our social order? What is implied in saying that the earth is holy, about our economic use of finite resources, how we as a society manage our needs? Would we consider it a sacrilege or a desecration to destroy our natural environment? How would we treat ourselves, our bodies, if we truly believed in their inherent worth and dignity and divinity? Would we create cultures of reverence? Moreover, what would it take to cultivate a watchful spirit, a practice of vigilance and observance, expecting the holy to appear, to be revealed, to be seen? We can be mindful of those moments when we feel that we are a small part of something far greater than us, when we encounter something far greater than us. We can call to mind those moments in which we experience an enlarged sense of the self, remembering those moments of awe and wonder, when the world that we survey astounds us with its grandeur and its beauty. We can be mindful of those moments when the holy breaks into our ordinary lives, responding with a heartfelt, wow. And we can let the memories of experienced reverence guide us in how we interact with each other, how we approach our lives, living with grace and humility and compassion. One need not have breathtaking mystical experiences to understand one's connection to others, to the ecosystems that constitute and sustain life on this planet. One needs only to pay attention to what is. One need only remain mindful, watchful, awake, observant.